Imagine the Houston Texans defense with help from the offense in 2024. If they could get some help in 2025, we are potentially looking at a top 5 defense. We talk about that and Christmas coming early. My OTA wish list, Locked On Texans. Let's lock in.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. This one is for Texan fans all around. It's your boy, Locked On Texans host, John Hickman. I put the H-Town Sports, credential media member, and Texans football analyst. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day, being a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's episode, we'll be diving back into the YouTube comments. There is nothing better than the slow grind. The slow grind is better than no grind, so I'll be back talking with you guys. Also giving my OTA wish list. What do I want to see as the Houston Texans kick off OTAs? Now, man, it's getting excited, right? The Houston Texans will be kicking off OTAs Wednesday, and this will be one of the more pivotal years. Everything starts now. But I open up today's show looking at the perks of getting help. You know, sometimes people avoid help. They want to do everything on their own. Sometimes people look for help and they are still not able to get help, right? And that was the major case for the Houston Texans defense in 2024. Like, the defense would give Houston opportunities to put the game away time and time again. And the frustration built up. I'm sure it did, from players in the locker room, from a coaching perspective. But just seeing how often those guys were able to keep games either close, winnable, or at times win the game because the defense was so stout. But then those opportunities and moments where you look at the offensive side of the ball not holding up their side of the bargain. So this is why the defense needs the offense to step up this season. The Texans defense, top 5 in points allowed in the first half. 9.5 in the first half. That falls to 20th in the second half, nearly 12 points allowed. On the other side, the Texans offense ranked 11th in the first half of games in offensive scoring per half. That dropped drastically in the second half, falling to 25. Texans also ranked 8th in the league in punts per game. One of Houston's biggest problems, I think a proponent to Bobby Slowick's firing, was just the amount of slow second half starts that led to dogfights for the Houston Texans, which continued to back the defense at the corners. Credit to the defense for fighting themselves out of those corners, keeping the defense and the team alive altogether, rather. They gave the Houston Texans a chance to win, but that song got old. 8 games in 2024, the Texans were outscored in the third quarter. The Texans lost 4 of those games. This is excluding the Baltimore Ravens game and the Minnesota Vikings game. I believe those games just got out of hand quickly. But 8 games in 2024, half of those games they lost. And in those games, the Texans were outscored in the third quarter. One of my biggest critiques of Bobby Slowick was just how unprepared the offense looked coming out into the second half of games when the opposing defenses made adjustments to the offensive game plans. And for that, this is where Houston is looking to get some good fortune from Nick Caley, and of Nick Caley being a Sean McVay disciple, to pay off hugely for them. Zach Robinson in his first year, Atlanta, 2024, 6 in yards per game. Kevin O'Connell, his first year in Minnesota, 7th in the league, yards per game. Liam Cohen, Tampa Bay, 2024, 3rd, right under 400 yards per game. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the thought process into why Houston said, you know what, Nick Caley, Your background makes sense for us. The resume in some areas checks out. You've been through the like you've been through the process of being around guys. You've touched the garment of some of these offensive gurus that we believe, if I'm thinking like the Houston Texans, we believe that you can come in and maximize the talent on the roster and also get this offense, to a place where we don't have slow third quarters. Houston would go into the halves of games up. Houston would end up in fourth quarters fighting for their lives. A main reason why they lost the Detroit Lions game. Guys, you can kill me all you want, but the Detroit Lions game was the game that eventually showed us who the Houston Texans were going to be, who they are. The flashlight was on them. The mirror was on them as well. It was clear cut. This is a team that by the time they play the elites of the elite teams in the NFL, they will eventually fold because their offense has become predictable. It counted on big plays down the field. And also, to be fair, the offense was injured. Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell was up and down throughout the year until both of those players were out. Stephon with ACL. Tank Dell with his gruesome injury that I don't want to talk about. The offensive line was a problem. So banking on Nick Caley in combination of the rest of the offensive assistant coaches that they brought in and also Cole Popovich to get this offense to a place where they are just above average. Because if they are just above average, and they could be more than above average, honestly, guys, by the time Houston gets to week 10, this offense could be clicking and on a roll. The early season humps that they'll have to go through, which, again, will start now in OTAs. But by the time they get to week 10, some of those kinks can be worked out, right? But the perks of an above average offense is a top 5 defense. That's just what it is. I give you guys the numbers. I give it to you again. Texans defense top 5 in points allowed per half. 9.5 in the first half. That fell to 20th in the second half. And a lot of that had to do with the amount of times the Houston Texans offense was not able to move the ball, was not able to get into scoring position, was not able to finalize on drives, whether it was a field goal, because we saw Kaimi at some point during the season just start to miss field goals routinely, or the offense just being at a stalemate consistently, giving opposing teams the opportunities to stay in games. That was the reality for the Houston Texans throughout the entire year. They had dogfights against Chicago in week 2. They had a dogfight against Indianapolis in week 1, right? Nick, Cole, Jerry, the rest of the offensive assistants get this offense to above average. What is above average? Houston's offense was 18th in the NFL in 2024. Get them to 15, 14, 13. And watch how the defense will be able to carry the Houston Texans to the promised land. Excuse me. That's all. That's the best outcome for this team. Now, do you want them to be a top 10, top 5 offense? Absolutely. Based off of the names, their first year away from Sean McVay and what they were able to do, Zach Robinson, Kevin O'Connell, who I'm a huge fan of, Liam Cohen, like they were able to 6th, 7th, 3rd offenses, top 10 offense in the NFL, 6, 7, and 3. Absolutely. Houston will kill for that. If Houston turns out to be a top 5, top 7 offense, then you are absolutely looking at a top 3 defense. But all Houston really needs to get going is for those guys to be just above average. And the defense will end up being a top 5 unit in the NFL. There's no doubt about it in my mind. When you have Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, you bring over C.J. Gardner-Johnson, a healthy year from Stingley, another year under his belt in Kamari Lassiter, Jalen Petrie coming back into the fold. Like, these guys are routinely getting after the opposing quarterback. These guys are routinely making plays in the air. Kalen Bullock going into his second year, who, by the way, just changed his number. The blessing of being an above average offense gives the defense an opportunity to feast, create turnovers, create sacks, because when offenses are playing from behind, there isn't a lot of patience in the NFL anymore across the league. If they are behind more than a touchdown, they're airing it out. And when offenses get to airing it out, okay, Will, this is where that contract is gonna come into mind. When you want to get paid, Daniil, we just extended you. So the expectation for you is to get after the quarterback. Derek Stingley, same. Kamara Lassiter, the same. And all the Houston Texans defense need is for Nick Caley and his offensive staff to get the Houston Texans to be a top 13 to 15 offense realistically in his first year. Now, on the other side, when I come back, Christmas is a little early. No white beard, no ho going on, but I do got some OTA wish list of things that I want to see starting Wednesday from the Houston Texans. So we got more Locked On Texans, Texans talk. Stay locked in on the Locked On. We'll be back shortly. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments. I don't think there's been a series better than New York and Indiana this entire playoff series. Whether it's game-winning shots or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays. Fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. Which players are showing up in the biggest moments? And how could you track their trends to help you build your next bet? I'll tell you how. FanDuel has that feature for you. Look at players' trends and performances before you pick your next parlay. And if you've got a read on a player who's heating up, maybe last game, PJ Tucker, today, 5 threes. I'm just playing. But maybe last game that player went over their 3-point mark. Maybe they'll do it again. Maybe you take that player on a player prop. Back it up with the same game parlay. New to FanDuel, no problem. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Battle Red Nation, welcome back to the Locked On Texans podcast. Now let's go into battle with each other, starting with OTAs. Super Bowl hopes aside, what do I want to see from Houston on day one of OTAs? And this is where I want you guys to be included into the show. So the next time I get into the YouTube comments, like I want to see what y'all want to hear and see and feel from the Houston Texans day one of OTAs. A lot of great local media will be out there. I won't have the opportunity to be out there. Hopefully I'll be back for training camp. But with OTA starting Wednesday, there are a lot of things I think to be excited about, to be optimistic about, to be pessimistic about, but also kind of have your concerns about. And that conversation will lead us to what's important, the things that you absolutely want to see. And for me, there's three things. Three things, guys. And teams can conduct 7-on-7 drills, 11-on-11 drills. Live contact is prohibited during OTAs. Typically, OTA practices include team meetings. Position coaches and the team will review playbook and film. Individual player groups will work on specific drills. Special teams will get their time out there. And again, some 11-on-11 full team drills can be incorporated without live contact. But the three things that I want to see is continuity, number one. Aaron Wilson had a report to come out that talked about how often the offensive unit was just not on the same page at all last year. Players giving Bobby Slug their ideas and things that they maybe want to see happen in the playoffs. Sorry, not the playoffs, but within the offensive scheme. Chris Stroud saying one thing, being a part of the reason why players are actually getting the player time, because Popovich having to be the reason why those players are getting coached up and maybe getting better. Whatever it was, that unit, that side of the ball had its own dysfunction in 2024. So the first thing I want to see out there on the field, continuity. I don't care if the continuity is bad. I don't care if the continuity is a work in progress or the continuity is at a place where we expect for training camp to be a little bit smoother in 2025 compared to 2024 together, right? I felt like different groups were on the same page in 2024. Maybe in 2025, we see all groups be on the same page, but it's important for this team to have continuity. It's more important for the offensive side to have the continuity to be successful. Defensively, they brought back all their starters. And then they asked CJ Gardner-Johnson. Defensively, continuity is there. Offensively, if this is another year where nobody's on the same page consistently, and I ain't talking about a quarter, I ain't talking about a half, I'm talking about games, then we will start looking at Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans as well, and that coaching staff that they put together. We'll start looking at them a little funny in the light. So continuity is number one for me, guys. Number two, the presence felt from the newcomers. We hear from Nick Caley on Friday and Texan players throughout the OTA period over the course of the next 10 days. And I want to get an idea of the impact of the vets, the impact the vets will have on this team specifically. A guy that I think because of the draft and the draft hype, and this wasn't the sexier offseason, Christian Kirk. This offseason signings was not as sexy as 2024, which leaves room for the conversation surrounding the younger guys and their potential on this team. Will they be able to overtake the vets? Will the vets hold it down? I want to see Cam, Kirk, and Ingram set the tone. I want to see all three of those players set the tone. Simply because Cam, well, your replacement is Ariante Ursery. Christian Kirk, your guy in your shadow will be Jalen Noel. And I'm also throw John Metchie into that case. Ingram and Tomlinson, Juice and Jarrett, Ladarius Henderson. There's guys that are younger waiting for whatever your potential will be, for whether you screw up or if you do good. Though there are guys waiting behind you to take over. So I'm excited to see what the newcomers on this team will be able to provide for the Houston Texans. And number three, my wish list over the course of the next 10 days, however long OTAs and this period lasts, I want to see CJ Stroud in the early stages of this offense and command it. We need to see CJ command it. Now, granted, we are in May. June is around the corner. July is where it really gets hot, and I mean in the city of Houston, but also at training camp, when the competition is really there and they can put some pads on people, we know ain't nobody touching CJ. That red jersey going to stay clean. If that red jersey get dirty, it probably rained in Houston that day. But that red jersey going to stay clean. What I want to see starting now is CJ play with a sense of pace, urgency, command, and rhythm. So by the time we get to July, it's not a lot of setbacks. And that's what I got from last year. Like, if I could revisit 2024 a little bit, it felt like the roadblocks that were there for Houston was also created by Houston in many different ways. In a lot of those ways, of course, maybe 70, 80% of those ways were Bobby Slork. But my biggest thing that I want to see is CJ come out with a command of the offense in its early stages. These guys are just going to be going over film, the playbook, right? Like I mentioned, all of this is early stages. But I believe CJ has been kept away. I feel like he's kept himself away from everything. Throughout last season, CJ mentioned on several occasions just how much he looks to LA and New England in their offense. And he has a guy with a background of both. And I believe that background appeases the quarterback. So much so he's been, like I said, locked away. So I just want to see him play with that swag and funness that he played in his rookie year and at times in 2024, but just the early stages of him in year 3, commanding the offense and everything that comes with it. When we come back on the opposite side, YouTube comments, what y'all been talking about? Can't wait to talk to you. Thank you for staying locked in on the Locked On Texans podcast. Don't go nowhere. We got more Texans talk today. Thank you for making the Locked On Texans your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting as training camp gets closer. OTAs are here. Moves are being made. Host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Now to dive into the YouTube comments before we close out today's show. My man Corey 5991. The only team in the AFC they don't match up well with are the Ravens. They can beat the Bills. Granted, the Houston Texans beat the Bills. They can hang with the Chiefs, and that's where I'm gonna have a pushback with you, Corey. Even with a 10-7 season, they almost went to the AFC Championship game. So the Ravens are 100% the Houston Texans' biggest thorn in their side. Lamar Jackson creates problems for him on using his feet on the ground. The offense, I feel as though, does a very good job of, when I look at the Ravens offense, they do a very good job of creating those mismatches the Houston Texans have trouble dealing with, not outside, right? I don't have a problem with how Houston defends the corners. It's all inside. And I think that's a problem for the Houston Texans. They have yet to be able to beat Houston, to beat Baltimore. As a matter of fact, I think the combined score is like 60-12, 60-13 or something like that. So they absolutely have a hard time beating the Ravens and competing with the Ravens. The Kansas City Chiefs, the last team to win a Super Bowl from the AFC, they have beat them, a couple of times, right? Granted, the last 2 times the Houston Texans played them in 2024, they were without majority of their big dogs, their receivers. So they were limited on weapons. When they was in the game, Tank Dell goes down with an injury. That is where I think for Houston to really feel like it's real. If you guys remember, when we did the 2 early schedule predictions, I had the Houston Texans losing to the Chiefs, but I also had that marked as a swing game. I don't personally think the Chiefs just got a whole lot better. I don't. And I know Pat Mahomes is Pat Mahomes. 10 times out of 10, that is the quarterback you're picking first over all the quarterbacks in the NFL. I'm not going to argue on that. Pat Mahomes is Pat Mahomes. However, Houston can compete with them. Have they beat them? No. And that's where I have to be fair. Houston has not beat that team yet. But Houston can compete with those guys. Houston also needs to just be healthy by the time that they play them. And with Nick Caley in this offense, Houston's approach has to be different. And again, guys, it's going to start inside out. Everything is inside out. Reginald Rager, 2143, just winning the division is not good enough. That's mid. That's that popcorn. Reginald is tired of the popcorn. Reginald wants that Zod, and winning the division ain't the Zod no more. We need to go over the hump. If we don't make it to the AFC champion game, it's a failed season. And I think a lot of people feel that way, Reginald. I think a lot of people feel that way about the Houston Texans this year. So we will see where it ends off. Joseph Sellers, 5978. The entire offense has question marks at every position, from how well Stroud picks up and execute the new plays, depth at running back, injuries, and production at tight end. Every wide receiver but Nico is a big question mark. We all know about the offensive line, and even the coaching staff and its game planning are huge unknowns. The defense should keep them in games while they try to figure it out at least. And I think that's the perfect way to put it for the first 5 to 6 weeks of the season, which is why an early bye week for the Houston Texans is, I think, a big blessing. They'll be going through their own growing pains. This is a team that I believe will benefit greatly from a competitive preseason, something that they didn't have last year. This is a team that I believe will benefit greatly from everybody all hands on deck at OTAs. Like that wasn't the case for Houston last year. And with the new playbook, you need everybody there. With a new coaching staff in certain areas, you need everybody there. The foundation and the groundwork is being laid on Wednesday at OTAs. What I do like about that comment is just the realness and also the production at tight end. Jerry Shaplinski is here. Nick Caley is also here. They have a good background with working with tight ends. Can they get the best out of Dalton Schultz? And what does the best out of Dalton Schultz for this team looks like? That is where I want to see the growth from this offense. At times, the tight ends were completely canceled out. Even when the wide receivers had their injuries and those guys went down, the tight end group was completely just phased out of the games at times last year. Can that unit be a unit that provides support for the Houston Texans this year? Because they're going to need it. They are banking on two rookie receivers, Christian Kirk to stay healthy. Where is the faith in John Mechie this year? Justin Watson just got an endorsement from D'Amico Ryans, but to be honest, he's not a needle mover. Braxton, I just gave you guys 6 guys. Didn't even mention Hutch. Didn't mention the other guys, right? They are banking on at least 5 guys to be somewhat of contributors in their wide receiver room. 2 of those guys have never played an NFL snap. One is a vet who has had some good moments but has dealt with injuries as of late in his career. They will need the tight end unit to be a productive unit. And if they don't, if that is a unit that continues to be phased out of games, then that is where I will say, you know what, it's going to be hard for Houston. Because ideally, you would want your wide receiver unit to be, your tight end unit to be those units you can count on in third and short situations, in red zone situations, to help you move the chains, to help you score points. They missed that last year from Houston, from the tight end group. They missed it. So hopefully this is a unit that is greatly improved from 2024 and that their contributions will kind of take the pressure off the young rooks and the vets that are also fighting for a roster spot here. Thank you for staying locked in on the Locked On Texans podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and Twitter as well. Follow me on Twitter as John_Hickman12. Until next time, Texan fans across the nation, peace.